The 2025 NBA offseason had a ton of really impactful moves, and now that we've gotten a decent way into the season, we can look back and see just how well some of these deals are or maybe aren't working out for these teams. First is the biggest move of the entire offseason, and it's Kevin Durant going to the Houston Rockets. And for Houston, this has been an outstanding move for them. They look like one of the best teams in the Western Conference, even without Fred VanVleet, who got hurt after they traded for Durant. And this looks like a roster that even in a loaded Western Conference with OKC, who looks unbelievable even without Jalen Williams, and Denver, who's clearly very good, Houston has put themselves in that inner circle in the Western Conference where they have a chance to contend, and that doesn't happen without the Kevin Durant trade. They haven't had to rely on him a ton, at least they haven't had to overly rely on him, which is really important for someone that has had injury issues the last couple of years, obviously is getting a little bit older. Really, more importantly than anything else, they've just had a bunch of guys step up and improve, most notably Alperen Şengün. Tari Eason's had a really good start to the year. They've shot the ball really well from three to start the year. They're the best offensive rebounding team in the entire league, and you can see a version of this team where they guard really well, they're really good on the offensive glass, and they just kind of grind out these games. They get into close games, and you have Kevin Durant and then Alperen Şengün, of course, as well, as the closers of the team. And when you get into the postseason and it becomes more of a possession-by-possession game, I can see this Rockets team really being a true threat to any other team in the Western Conference. They're not going to be the favorite, but this trade has put them in a position that they just would not have been without it. So it absolutely, to me, has to be an A+. The other side of it for Phoenix is kind of an incomplete grade. Dylan Brooks has been good. Jalen Green's barely played due to injury. Malawach is obviously like a project and a work in progress. Obviously, it made sense to move on from Durant. They've had a nice start to the year, but in terms of grading the move itself, it's still too early because a lot of it is kind of the future, but you can grade it whatever you want to. Right now, it's kind of an incomplete. Really quickly, though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile, and they provide phone service plans that really focus on a couple of things. First and foremost, ease of use. You don't want to have to go to a store. You don't have to spend 2 hours dealing with setting everything up. You can do everything easily, and you can do it all online from your home. The second big thing for me, and this is a massive deal, is flexibility. 3, 6, 12-month plans are all available. You save more the more that you sign up for initially, but you get that flexibility of choosing not only between 3, 6, and 12-month plans, but also how much data you need every month. 5 gigs, 15 gigs, 20 gigs, all the way up to unlimited. Having that optionality and that flexibility is really, really helpful. And on top of that flexibility, you also get great value for the price as well with unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. And that coverage includes 5G coverage to 98% of Americans and 4G LTE coverage to 99% of Americans. And right now you can combine all of that, the ease of use, the flexibility, the great value at Mint Mobile right now. You can get an unlimited premium wireless plan from Mint for just $15 a month on either a 3, 6, or 12-month period. And all plans come with an unconditional 7-day money-back guarantee. So if you're looking for great value on a mobile phone plan this holiday season, make sure to check out Mint Mobile. For a limited time this holiday season, you get 50% off an unlimited wireless premium plan with Mint. That is their best rate. You can go ahead and lock that in, again, for just $15 a month on 3, 6, or 12-month plans. Make sure to check them out, and thank you again to Mint Mobile for sponsoring this video. I would say the second biggest move of the offseason, and maybe the biggest trade overall, was the Desmond Bane trade to Orlando. This came relatively out of nowhere. It was a massive step forward, at least supposed to be a massive step forward for a Magic team that could see themselves competing at the top of the Eastern Conference, and an Eastern Conference with a bunch of guys hurt, maybe not any true number one teams in the conference. And this has been, I wouldn't say it's been a disaster for Orlando, but it definitely has been one of the worst case scenario outcomes for them so far. Paolo is already hurt. He wasn't playing well even before he got hurt. The head coach is on the hot seat, and Desmond Bane just has not been very good. The thought process behind trading for him and why you would give up contracts and a bunch of first-round picks was he is the creator that they need on the perimeter. He also boosts their shooting, and alongside Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero, that is 4/5 of what should be a really, really good starting lineup, especially in a weaker Eastern Conference. And that just has not happened. And there's two things that concern me here for Orlando. One, the overall offensive scheme, regardless of what pieces they shift in and out of the lineup every season, just never seems to improve. They are once again, for what feels like the billionth year in a row, a bottom 10 team in offensive rating. It doesn't matter if they bring in KCP in an offseason. It doesn't matter if Paolo has a really good year, if Franz has a really good year, they bring in Desmond Bane. It doesn't matter. They can't find a way to be a good offensive team. And that was always supposed to be what the Desmond Bane trade was going to do. The other part of this that really concerns me is Bane was supposed to unlock Franz and Paolo a little bit more in other ways, where you're not relying so much on them on the ball. You provide better spacing for them. All their efficiency numbers go up. And for Paolo specifically, that has not happened. The Bane trade was supposed to be not just, we're going to bring in Desmond Bane, he's a good player, but it was supposed to be a force multiplier for the rest of the roster, most notably the younger guys in Paolo and Franz. And it is early in the season, and obviously when you're making this big of an addition, it's going to take some time. But early returns have not been good at all in Orlando. I would give them like a D grade probably here. It's obviously still early in the season. They could still be really good down the stretch. Maybe guys get healthy, but expectations were high, obviously, for the Magic, and they just have not even remotely close to met those expectations. On the other side of this for Memphis, it's not really so much about the letter grade here and more so about the fact that, yeah, this was pretty clearly a good idea. The Ja Morant situation is just kind of falling apart, so I guess you could say it was a bad idea because now what kind of the point was, you're trading away Bane and then your franchise cornerstones are Morant and Jackson, Jaren Jackson, and then all of a sudden, Ja's falling apart. But it kind of seems like maybe the franchise, the organization was going to fall apart anyway, and so getting ahead of the Desmond Bane thing, getting as much value as they did for him so they can kind of maybe even just move into a new era of Grizzlies basketball. I would say right now it's definitely turned out to be the better move for them in comparison to just keeping him, especially when you consider how much value they got in exchange for Desmond Bane. This one has probably the most room to grow, or maybe one of the most rooms to grow of anything we're going to talk about in the video, where things could look dramatically different by the end of the season. But to begin the year, it's been a tough one for Orlando and looks like a pretty good move for Memphis. Next, let's talk about the Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Johnson trade between Denver and Brooklyn. This was a move that, as a Nets fan, I was really excited about at the time. Getting a first-round pick this far out in exchange for Cam Johnson was always going to be a win for me, and a lot of people really, really liked the move for Denver as well. And the fit of Cam Johnson in Denver made a lot of sense. Everybody plays well alongside Jokic. He's going to provide them great spacing. He's going to be healthier, potentially more consistent than Michael Porter Jr., and he's going to be a little bit better of a driver and a playmaker. That was the thought process. You're trading a little bit of, size and rebounding for someone that is theoretically just as good of a shooter, a better playmaker, and cheaper. There was a significant financial aspect to this because they traded Michael Porter Jr. in a first in exchange for Cam Johnson, and then they used some of that extra money to bring in guys like Bruce Brown, a variety of other moves on the roster. But strictly the deal itself, Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr., it has not been great for Denver. I'm going to give them a C grade because Cam Johnson just has not been good. Now, early returns on things like this are always a little bit iffy. Sometimes it goes like it did in Orlando last year with KCP, where it just never turns around. The situation just isn't right. That's a possibility with Cam Johnson in Denver. Or it's just a small sample size and he's going to end up being a really good player, as he has been for pretty much the entirety of his career. I would certainly anticipate things getting better for Cam Johnson and this being a good move anyway for Denver. And by the way, they're still really, really good. They're still near the top of the West. They still look like a contender, even without getting contributions they expected from Cam Johnson. The other concern, obviously, is that future first-round pick, but the flexibility that they added, the ability to add other pieces on the roster, I think still is going to work out really, really well for Denver, unless some of the kind of rebounding and size issues between him and Michael Porter Jr., the comparison between those two guys, really show themselves in the postseason. On the other hand, for the Nets, this has got to be like an A or an A+ move for them. Obviously, the contract for MPJ is a concern, but you get that first-round pick, and Michael Porter Jr. is putting up fantastic numbers. I don't know that it's necessarily going to help you move him at the deadline because the contract number is still so big, but this feels like best case scenario for Brooklyn in terms of trading away Cam Johnson, getting Michael Porter Jr. to play really well, potentially in a way you can get value out of him, and you get that extra first-round pick all the way in the future from Denver as well. This has been like an A or an A+ move for them, and we'll see how things continue to progress in Denver. Next is the most shocking move of the entire offseason. It's kind of a combination move here for the Bucks. They waived and stretched Damian Lillard's contract so that they could bring in Miles Turner. And obviously the thought process here was, well, Dame's not going to play all year anyway. We need to add someone so that we can keep Giannis happy. And I, at the time, and still continue to think, this was just an absolutely absurd decision to stretch out this much money on Damian Lillard's contract. This felt like everybody else knows the Giannis thing is over except Milwaukee, and they're doing everything they can to keep him. Miles Turner's been good, though. I think the Bucks have been a little bit better than expected, although, unfortunately, as of this recording, Giannis is going to be dealing with an injury, which is the one thing they just cannot afford the rest of the way. And I would say right now, this is a B move for Milwaukee because this season it's made them better and Miles Turner's been good. Obviously, the concern was Miles Turner, if he's not good, all of a sudden that's a ton of investment to put on someone that is just not contributing the way that you want them to. And obviously, they've had other guys step up like Ryan Rollins. They've been good to begin the season, better than expected. And in any scenario in which this allows you to keep Giannis, whereas if you didn't make the move, he would have requested a trade, then it's obviously a win. Long term, I'm still very concerned about it, but in the short term, this appears to have worked, and so I will give them a B grade while also withholding judgment on the long-term outlook of the move, as well as kind of what their actual ceiling is overall in the East this year. Next is another kind of combination move, and it's the Boston Celtics just like dumping everybody. They traded Drew Holiday, they traded Kristaps Porzingis, they let a couple guys leave in free agency, and I was really, really low on Boston coming into the year because I just didn't understand who was going to be playing in the front court. Jaylen Brown, number 1 option, made me nervous. Derek White, number 2 option, made me a little bit nervous. And I would say this is kind of a B move as well. They've been slightly better than I anticipated after a slow, early start to the season. And in any scenario in which Boston's like a 500 team and Jason Tatum doesn't play all year, this was a great move. Like, they got a ton of financial flexibility moving forward. They're going to be able to plan and prepare for what the team looks like next year when Tatum does come back and is healthy. And really the only thing that could be better than what's happening here at Boston is if they were really bad. Like if they were 2-12 or something and had a chance to potentially go and get a high pick because they have their pick this year, that would, I would say, be a better outcome. But in a scenario in which you're still trying to be semi-competitive in the Eastern Conference, where the Celtics are right now, is pretty good. Again, slightly above expectation. And obviously it shows that it made a lot of sense to dump those guys because you could still be semi-competitive and significantly cheaper. You're still looking for some more growth from some of the younger guys and maybe some moves at the deadline, like trading someone like Anthony Simons. And as the season goes along, obviously the storyline is going to be, 1, is Tatum going to come back? And 2, if he isn't, are they going to try and tank? All of that remains to be seen, but through the first 15 or so games for the Celtics, this appears to definitely be a good decision. And then I want to talk about the Knicks and firing Tom Thibodeau, which obviously was this massive decision. They make a really nice postseason run and they fire Tibbs anyway, and they bring in Mike Brown, which the concept of let's get rid of the coach that just took us as far as we went in the postseason and then let's hire the coach that the Sacramento Kings fired, that doesn't sound great. And as of this recording, the Knicks record isn't great, but they've been dealing with some injury stuff. I think this is an A move though. And this comes from someone that was not really that excited about the fact they fired Tibbs in the first place. And I didn't really love the Mike Brown addition either. Offensively, there are things happening here. Even if the Knicks don't win 55 games this season, even if they're not as good of a regular season team as they were under Tibbs, there are some sustainable offensive things in terms of movement, in terms of less reliance on Jalen Brunson, in terms of getting more out of guys like Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, that I think generally speaking, even though the record isn't where you'd want it to be for the Knicks, you can point to the coaching switch, at least so far, as a positive. Once they get healthy, I definitely see a scenario in which, no disrespect to Detroit, Cleveland, maybe even Milwaukee, I see a scenario in which the Knicks enter the postseason as the favorites to represent the East in the NBA Finals. And a lot of that, of course, would have to do with the fact that they brought in a new coach. So I'm reserving judgment on this one still a little bit, and it's a little bit of an odd take because if you look at their record, you might be thinking that they're disappointing, but like I said, injury stuff. I like what's happening offensively in New York, and so I'm going to give them an A grade for that one. Still keeping an eye on all these moves, but that's where I stand right now.